Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth part of this tutorial series, and in this one I'll be showing you how to build this detail screen over here. So here's a screenshot of what we want to achieve in this video, and we'll head over to Android Studio and get started. So the first thing I want to show you is from the previous video we created this is loading more logic over here, but I forgot to actually make use of it in our search screen. So over here in our scroll listener, you just add this condition over here. So if it is not loading, and if it is not loading more and it has more pages, load more page. So what this stuff is going to prevent is whenever I get to the end of the page over here, if I'm currently loading more and I still scroll to the end, it is going to prevent it from making another request to the API until is loading more is false. That is when you finish getting the when you get back your response like we set it on this line. So that is how to make use of that is loading more logic. And the next thing I want to also correct is this lister name over here. It's returning null, and I did implemented it, but I think there was a problem with my logic, so I would just correct that right now. So I would put this condition and put on available. Yeah, so we'll save it and we'll see. So correct, so it's now working. So whenever the lister name is null or whenever it is not provided, it shows this unavailable text. So that is how to solve that. So the next thing we're going to do would be to head over and create our detail screens in our screens folder. So I'll name it bad naming on search screen, or leave it like that, detail screen. Cool. So while it's loading, while it's loading out, head back to search screen and wrap our list property item in an inkwell widget. So whenever we click on it, it should go to the detail screen. So first thing, let me just quickly create a stateless widget over here. So detail screen. So hello, I think that is okay. So I'll save that, then I'll head back to a search screen and wrap property item in an inkwell widget. So cool. So this is our child. Then we also have the on tap. So on tap, I want to navigate to the detail screen. So navigator.off push material page routes. What type of builder is this? Okay, widget builder, which is just going to pass in the context. So we'll pass in the context over here. So I want to return detail, just slide this detail screen, then I'll import the detail screen, then we just format. So what this is going to do, whenever I tap on this a property item, it should navigate to the detail screen. So I think that should work right now. Okay, yeah, so it's actually navigating to the detail screen. So over here in the detail screen, normally, like from this API, the Nestora API does not provide us with an endpoint for individual property item. So normally, if it provided us with probably an ID over here and an endpoint for getting an individual property, whenever we click on get detail, we just pass the ID to the detail screen and make another API request. But since Nestora API did not provide us with that, we'll just pass in the particular property object. So let's head over and do that. So in our detail screen, let me close all this. In our detail screen, what we are going to return here would be a custom scroll view. And yeah, the Slivers property, then would return a sliver app bar. And before we actually do that, let me just create an object here of property. So we want to pass an individual property to this detail screen. So property, and we'll create the constructor. Cool. So we pass in property over here. Then in the sliver app bar, we'll set some stops. So this is what we want to create over here. This stuff over here is the sliver app bar. So, and when you scroll past this app bar over here, it docks to the top like this. So we'll head back and do pinned equals to true. I think floating equals to false. Cool. Then what next? We're not going to pass in a title. We're going to pass in the flexible space. So flexible space bar, which I would explain right now. So this flexible space bar is this stuff over here, this whole region over here, and I'm going to set a height for it. So the expanded height is going to be 256 dp. Then as you scroll, the height is going to be reducing. So just like your normal WhatsApp UI profile screen, but you'd see how that is as we proceed. So I'll create a background. Yeah, so I'll create a background. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So the background is going to be a stack widget. So a stack widget is just simply what we're going to use over here to lay items, lay widgets on top of each other. So you can see this one is at the background, then you have this other widget on top of it, and we also have kind of like a linear gradient over here. So I'll show you how to do that right now. Okay, so we have the fit stack fit.expand. I'll show you what that does very soon. So stack fit.expand is just going to make the item stretch to the width and height of its parents. I'll show you how that look when we get to that stage. So the next item is going to be the children, and the first item is going to be an image, network image, property dot what's the image URL? And we'll give it the box fit.cover, so it's going to fill up the whole screen. And back to this flexible spec bar, there's one property, a sliver app by min. So we'll set the what's that property? Expanded height to 256 dp. So I think this is getting a bit confusing, so I'll head back here and actually go to the detail screen so you'd see what I'm actually building here. So over here I would pass in, I don't want to make this I'll just remove all this and so I want to pass it directly. So to be model the properties that index -1. Cool. So I'll click on it and we'll see what we've been building over here so far. So I'll click on one item. Cool. So you can see the image over here is loaded. So we're making progress here. And you wouldn't be able to see how this expanded height works because we don't have any item we're scrolling over here. So the next item of the stack widget would be a gradient, which I just pasted over here. So what am I? Yeah. So the gradient, I just pasted it over here. I got it from one of the sample projects in the Flutter repository. So it's just going to add kind of like a shadow at the top of this app bar. So you could be able to see this back button because there could be some pictures where like this, let me see, where the background image could be white and you wouldn't be able to see this back arrow. So if I go over here and comment this gradient we just created, you'd see it to be hard to see this back arrow. Can you see the reason? You can't see the back arrow. So that is why I just added this linear gradient so you can be able to distinguish. Yeah. So the next item was going to be let me see. The next item is going to be a container. A container we're going to use wrap in a positioned widget. So what this positioned widget is, let me just do this. So what a positioned widget is going to do is it is used with a stack. It is used as a child of a stack widget. So it is used to just position items around your stack parent widget. So for instance here, this price tag over here is we're going to use the positioned element. We're going to use the positioned widget to put it at the bottom left corner of our screen. So we'll do that right now. So I would give it the bottom to be 20 for now. Then left would be 0. Then the container is going to have a child, which is going to be a row. But before that, let me see. Let me give it a color dot from RGBO. So 255, that's I'm giving it a white color, then an opacity of 0.5. Then the first child is going to be an icon, and it's going to be a font awesome icon. Font awesome icons. Did it import font awesome? Okay, yeah. So font awesome icons dot tag, and I'll give it a size of 20 for now. So the next child is going to be the text. We should be able to see this. Let me save this and see. Okay, yeah. So we can see the icon over here. So the next item is going to be the text, and the text is going to be property dot price formatted. So the first thing I would want to change over here is the style. So we do theme.off and give it a text theme of title. Then for the font awesome icon, I'll wrap it in a padding and give it padding, a right padding, so there will be kind of like a space between the text. Yeah. And also for the container, I'm going to give it a padding, a symmetric padding. The vertical padding would be 16, while the horizontal would be 8. Okay, the vertical padding, let me see what we're getting wrong here. Vertical 16. Okay, it should be the other way around. So this should be the vertical padding, that is the padding from the top and the bottom. Then for the horizontal padding, it should be 16 dp. Cool. Then the next thing would be to also give this icon a color. So the color is going to be we get the color from our theme. It's going to be the accent color, and I declared it over here in the main.dat. You can see the accent color is deep orange. So that is that for that section. And the next thing we're going to do would be to Let me see. Okay, so a brief overview for what we just did right now. So the sliver app bar is this section over here, and it has an expanded height of 256 dp. That is the height from here to here. Then we also have a flexible space bar that shrinks as we scroll. Then I set the background to be a stack with each first child element of this image, the second child element of this linear gradient over here, and the third child element to be this price tag. And we use the position property to position it at the bottom left corner of the stack. So the positioned widget is used with the stack widget. So if I comment this stack fit.expand, you'll see a difference. You can see the spacing. So with stack fit.expand, the child widget takes up the full width and height of the parent widget or the enclosing widget. So that is why I used stack fit.expand. So we're done with that. So the next thing would be to, outside the sliver app bar, would add in a sliver list. So for this, the delegate is going to be sliver child list delegate. We're not going to be using a builder. For our search screen, we use the builder because we know, as in we knew the amount of child elements it was going to have. But we're just going to use a sliver list child list delegate here and pass in the children manually. So, oops, what am I doing? Okay, so the next thing to do would be, so the sliver child list delegate, let's click on this. Okay, this dot children. So this dot children is going to be a list of widgets. So I would just come over here and create a list. And let's take a look at the screenshots. So from the screenshots, the first item is going to be this title over here. And this title is going to be in this section. So this is going to be the first container, which would have a column that contains the title and also the row that contains this icon. So this is going to be the first container, then the summary will be the second container, and the lister will be the third container. So for this sliver list, we're going to have three major children. So we have this section, the summary section, and also the detail section. So let me just format this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do would be to create a container for this first section. So the container is going to have a child, which is a column. Column would have children. So let's head back to our emulator. So the first thing I would do would be to scroll back up and give our scaffold a background color of gray. Okay, so I give it a background color of gray because I want the individual containers to have a color of white. So I'll head back down, and for this container I'll give it the first child should be a text, and the screen, let's see, property dot title. Then the next child would be a container. I'm putting it inside the container because I want to give it a decoration with this top and bottom border over here. So the container with a child of row, and its children are going to be this icon text. So we'd import that. Is it icon text or text icon? Okay, it's text icon. And what do they need? It needs an icon, so I'm gonna pass in font isom icon dot bed. That's for the first item. Then the text is gonna be, what does it need? Text. It's gonna be a string. So I would also pass in property dot bedroom number. Then if it is null, I pass in the hash, the pound symbol. Okay, then and also add the text bedroom. So format this, and that is for the first icon. So let me save and see. Okay, so it's falling in place. So I'll just duplicate this 2 more times. So for the second one, I'll pass in bedroom number. The third one is what? Car, 3 car space. So car spaces. And I would save and also change the icon. So shower, the third one would be car. I don't know if that is correct. Okay, cool. So we're making progress now. So for the container over here, the container wrapping all these items, we're going to give it a color, and it's going to be color dot white, and we'd also give it a padding of 16. Then for the title, we'd pass in style, then we'll set a custom font size of 24. Okay, cool. Then the next thing we're going to do would be for the column over here. Let me just check something. Okay, so I'll give it 24. So for the column over here, I'll send the cross-axis alignment to start. So all the whole item would be at the starting point over here. So cross-axis alignment to start. So this title text should shift. Cool, it shifted. Then for the row, I would put a main axis alignment to space around, so they'll be spread out amongst each other. Cool. Then for the enclosing container for the row, I'm going to give it a margin and a padding. So I'll give it a margin of symmetric, vertical, and I give it a margin of 16. and also give it a padding of 16. Cool. Then the next thing I'll do would be to add a decoration to it. So I would give it this border over here, the top border and the bottom border. So inside the container, I would also add a decoration, give it a box decoration. Then for the box decoration, I'll pass in the border. The top border would be border side, and the color will be colors.gray. The width will be 0.4. Then I'll duplicate that and pass it for the bottom border. And let's see how that looks. Why is this? Okay, let me just. Okay. So cool. Well, I don't know why this stuff is. Let me just do hot restart and see if there's anything special. Okay, so I just did a hot restart and it looks better right now. So back to our screenshot, you can see we're done with, are we really done? Yeah, we're done with the first section. So from this container, you can see I gave it a margin and a padding. That is for this container over here, this inner one. So this is the margin, the outward distance, and the padding is the inward distance from the items. So we're done with that first section. So the next section we're going to do would be the next section. So first of all, I'll give this first container a bottom margin of probably 4 pixels to give it a space from this section to the next one. So I'll head back up and give it a margin of only so I give it the bottom of 4. Cool. So we'll head over to the next section here, and the next one is also gonna be my code. Okay, let me confirm. Okay, yeah. So the next section is also going to be a container. Cool. So let's take a look at our screenshots. So it's going to be a container of this screen. So I'll just design it with the screenshot over here by the side. So the first child is going to be a, first of all, we'll give our container a color, which is white, colors.white. Then next we'll give it a padding of 16. Then the child is going to be a column and the children would be this. So these are the children, this text, this other one, and also this chips. So the first child is going to be the text. Property dot oh no, it's going to be text summary. So I made it a constant because it won't change. It's a comparison constant. So the next one is going to be this text, which is the property.summary. Cool. And the next one is going to be text property. Okay. So I'll make it a constant. Then I'll add a styling of, for you guys can always declare this theme.off function up, so you don't have to always call it this long way every time, but I'll just ignore that for now. So I'll give it a subtitle text. What am I doing wrong? Okay, it won't be a constant because this stuff is dynamic. So cool. Then we'll save that and see how that looks on our emulator. So you can see it's over here. So for the container, I would also give it a margin of a symmetric margin, a vertical margin of 4. So we gave this first container a margin of 4, then this one. So the margin between the two would be 8 dp. So cool. Then for the column, I'd also give it a cross-axis alignment to start. So it pushes them all to the left. Then for the summary, I would also copy this stuff and give it a style of text theme.title, then copy with font size of 20. Oops, what did I do wrong? Okay, I'll remove this constant stuff. Cool. So we can see it's all coming together. Then let me look at the screenshot and see what we can do over here. So I'll give the summary text, I'll wrap it in a padding and give it symmetric padding on the vertical axis of 8. Does 8 look good? I'll make that 16, might be much, but I'll make it 16 to see. Okay, not bad. Then cool. Then the next thing we're gonna do would be for this tags section. So in our sample request over here, sample response from Nestora API, we can see we have keywords over here. So the API returned a string of comma separated words. So you can see the keywords for one of these property item is garden, semi-detached, terrace, kitchen, parking, etc. So for that in our API, what I actually did was in our Nestora, in our value type class for the property class, I already created something over here. Let me just generate this stuff first of all, then I'll explain. Flutter packages, hub, run. Watch. Flutter packages, pub run, build runner. Watch. Okay, so what I just actually did here was I made use of this memoized annotation, and what it simply does is that it creates a new value from a previous value. So what this does, it does not like give you the value immediately. So for this keyword list, I'm actually building it from this keywords string variable over here. So when I get this keyword string variable, then I now create a built list of keyword lists. So what it just simply does, it takes the string and it splits it by comma and a space, because if I go back to the sample response here, you would see in the keywords after the comma there's also an empty space here. So I just created a simple function, which is an inbuilt function in that, to actually split the strings by a value you passed. So the value I passed here was a comma and a space, so it's going to split that string into a list. So this memoized keyword is just used to kind of like not spit out the value immediately, just to kind of like hold it in memory while you build others. So let me see. So you can see from here, getters marked with this annotation and memoized. That means the result is calculated once on first access, then stored in the instance. So you just use it to calculate results from other values. So you can see this is just what I did here. So we now have keyword list, which is going to be a list. So back in our details screen, we can now map through that list and display those tags. So for our tags, I'm going to do a simple function, a simple map function. Okay, so I'm going to do a map function inside a wrap widget. So a wrap widget is just going to simply wrap the items, the children. So what that simply does is that if you use a row widget, everything is going to be fixed on one horizontal line. But with a wrap, if the children is the size of the children is bigger than the width, it's going to push it to the next line. So that is what a wrap widget is used for. So I'm going to use a wrap widget, then I would add the run spacing, which is 8. I'll explain what this, then I'll also add the spacing, which is 4. Then the children, I'm not going to return this, I'm going to build it from the keyword list. So I'll do property dot keyword list dot map. Then I'm going to return KL, which is just going to be the text I'm passing. So I'm going to be returning a chip. The label is going to be KL. What am I doing wrong? Okay, I'll put this. The argument type. Okay. Then I'll also do to list. I'll remove that. So what this is going to do is it's going to kind of like loop through each keyword list item, because I told you since it's a list now there'll be individual words. So I just use this map function to, for each individual word, create a chip element, and this is a chip widget I mean. Then at the end of everything, I pass the toList function to make it a list, because this children property requires a list. So if I save it, let me see how that looks first of all. So you can see how it looks right now. So what I just have to do would be to just pass in some styling. Let me see what this one has. Background color of the accent color. Then I'd also, it should have a text. It should have a text property, text color property, I think. Oops, color. Let me check. Okay, label style. Then I'll pass in the color of colors.white. Cool. So is there any other thing we're missing? So for this stuff, I could just wrap it in a padding for this text over here and give it only bottom of probably 4 and see how that looks. Okay, cool. So you can see the wrap element here. So the run spacing is, what does it do? Is the space from one line to the next line. I think so. Let's confirm. Okay, cool. So that is it. Then the spacing is, let's just confirm. Let me change the spacing to 16. Okay, cool. So I was correct. So the spacing is the spacing from one child element to the other, while the run spacing is from one row or one line to the next line. So that is that for this. Then the next thing we're going to do would be to also give this container are we supposed to, okay, I think we've done that already. We've given it a margin and also a padding. Yeah, we've done that already. So that is that for this. And remember what I told you about this flexible header. You can see as we scroll, the height of the flexible space bar shrinks. So that is it. So the next thing we're going to do, which is the final thing, is to just quickly create this section over here, this lister section, and I'll do that quickly. So container, I think I'll just pause the video and do that quickly, then come back. So you can see what I just did here is a simple layout. So that was why I just skipped coding it manually. So you have a container, you also have a list style. So this is the list style with the title and the subtitle over here. So that is just it, with the same logic of if the data source or the lister name is unavailable, display this text. So that is it. So the final thing we're going to do for this screen is going to be to add this bottom button over here to open a web page to visit the actual listing. So for that, I'm going to add in our scaffold, I'm going to add this stuff of bottom navigation bar. Cool. Okay, so it's going to be a container. And the primary, what am I doing? Okay. Then the child is going to be a row. And I'll use an expanded widget here, expand. This visit listing stuff is a button, so I'm using the expanded widget to make the flat icon button stretch the through all its parents, which is the container. So I'll use the expanded widget, then I'll pass in, oops, the child, which is a flat icon button. No, for now. Then the icon is gonna be icons.launch. Then the label is gonna be, is it a string or a widget? What does it need? Okay, it needs a widget. So it's gonna be visit listing. Let me save that and see. Cool. So the next thing would be to also change the color of this stuff. Where are you? Should I change it manually? There should be a property for this. Okay, this is flag button. Okay, yeah, it should be, yeah. So text colors that's white. Do I need to do a hot restart? Let me check. Okay. The reason the color did not come in is because we have not created the unpressed function or unpressed event function over here. So what I'm going to do would be, whenever I click this function over here, it should return, it should open up a web page of the actual listing of this property. So to do that, I'm going to be using this plugin called URL launcher. So it's a simple plugin it's used to open up links. So I would install it. I'll just copy this over here, add this in my dependencies. Then once that is done, I would also come back here and copy. I want to copy this. So cool. So once that is done, I head back to my detail screen and add this imports over here, and also copy their function here. So launch URL function, it's a very simple function. I'll copy it, and so what this stuff does is, if the URL is valid, then it launches it. If it is not valid, it throws an exception. So I'm gonna name it launch URL, and this URL, I'm gonna be passing it through the function. So string URL, and also I'm gonna be passing, string URL. Cool. So this launch URL function is what I'm gonna be calling whenever we click on this button. So launch URL, then I'll pass in the URL, and the URL is gonna be property dot lister URL. Cool. Okay. So type future void dynamic. Okay, so this returns this launch URL, since it's an asynchronous function, it returns if dynamic future, and this unpressed events requires a return type of void. So what I'm going to do is just to put this stuff inside the unpressed function. So this should solve that. So unpressed returns void, while launch URL returns the dynamic feature. So I'll save, and you can see everything is working. So if I click on visit, it should open a web page. Okay, let me do a hot restart. Missing plugin. Blah blah blah. Okay, let me do a hot restart and see. Okay, so let me check what that problem is. So to solve that problem, what I just did was I just restarted my Android Studio and also restarted my emulator, because the error was related to something like, it was talking about platform channels. So I just felt I should restart my code editor and everything seems to work fine. So if I click on visit listing, it should open up the default web browser. So this is it. So you can see the listing over here, the complete detail of the listing. So one more thing I want to do would be, for instance, if we pass in a listing, an invalid listing, what should happen? So if I come over to this function over here, this unpressed function, and I pass in something like and I save it, which is a URL that is not available, a URL that can't launch, and I click on visit listing. After it performs the hot reload, currently it just throws an exception called could not launch, then it mentions the URL. So I don't want this behavior. Let's click it and see. You can see over here, could not launch HG. So I don't want this type of error. So what I want to do is I want to create a snack bar. So whenever we give it a URL that can't be launched or an invalid URL, it should show a snack bar over here. So I'll just simply add that. So I'll just comment this. And on the next line, I would add scaffold dots of show snack bar. Then I'll pass in a new snack bar. Then the content should be a text field. Can't load then I'll pass in the URL. Cool. So then it's talking about, first of all, okay, the braces is not needed because I'm not having an expression like it dots something something, so I would remove this. Then the context, I would also come over here and pass in the build context. Cool. So over here, I would now pass in as the first argument the context, then the next one is the URL. So if I save this, I should see a snack bar pop up. So when I click visit listing, no snack bar pops up. So the problem is here, it's talking about the scaffold.off called with a context that does not contain a scaffold. So this context we are actually passing here does not contain the scaffold. This context here, let me see. Okay, So inside our launch function, we don't have access to the scaffolds context. So what we can do to actually solve this is to wrap this flat button inside a builder widget. So when I do that, I would explain what that is. So I'll wrap it in a new widget called the builder, and I'll pass in the builder, which has the context. Then I'll return the flat icon button. So when this works, I'll explain what that actually means. So the builder, flat icon button. Cool. So let me save this. Then let me click on this. See, so you can see the snack bar shows can't load HG. So what a builder does is, a builder is simply a widget that returns a closure. So what it states here, it said it's a platonic widget that calls a closure to obtain its child widget. So what a closure simply means is a closure is just a function that has access to the enclosing functions variable. So in this sense, this builder widget returns a closure. So the closure has access to this context. This is the inner function here we are returning. So with the builder widget, what that does is, in our detail screen over here, with the help of this builder widget, this context is going to be accessed from the outer scope. So you can see here, this context we've passed into the flat button icon is this context we are calling over here. So this context is for this. So with the builder widget now, which returns a closure, this context now, with this builder, we don't have access to the scaffolds context. So whenever you have to do something like this and it complains about the scaffold or context, or a variable does not have access to the scope, you just wrap it up in a builder widget. So with that, you now have your flat button unpressed function now has access to the outer context. So you can see once more again, can't load HG. So if we come set this to the actual value, which is property.lister URL, and save, and we click, everything works as normal, as it should work. So I think we've come to the end of this particular part. So I would see you in the next one.